It's 6 p.m. Let's call roll, please.
Donna Oja,
Here.
Kaylin,
Here.
Greg Murray. Greg Murray.
Greg, you're muted.
Here. Gary Isbell. Here. Corey Box.
Here.
Don Dyke.
Here.
Mary Lee.
Here. Thanks for being here, everyone. For tonight's invocation, we've got a pastor at City Hall Chambers with us. Councilor Box, would you mind doing the introduction?
Yes, sir. Mayor and members of council, I'm pleased to introduce Pastor Drew Wright. He is a somewhat new executive pastor at First Baptist Jenks. He is also newly married as of this March of 2020. No children, but he has decided to take up stock and buy a house here in Jenks, so we're happy to have him as a new neighbor and a new pastor. So thank you, Pastor, very much for coming.
Thanks, Corey.
Pastor.
Hey, let's
Welcome.
pray. God, I thank you so much for this group of people who are leading and guiding the city of Jenks. I thank you for this community of people who gathered together and we all just take steps forward. I pray over each and every one of them for wisdom and guidance as they make decisions. I pray for clarity as they see things and try to take steps forward in a crazy turmoil world that we live in, where nothing actually makes a ton of sense moving forward. So I pray that you would just give them the wisdom from above, and as they move forward, that they would just lean in and trust each other, that they would trust themselves and the decisions that they made. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Welcome to Jenks. All right. Do we have any citizens' comments tonight on any item that's not on our agenda?
Yes, we do.
Okay, go ahead.
Over the past couple weeks, I've received several comments for City Council. Can everyone hear me all right? Good? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
The first one is from Mr. Hank Ryan, Jenks residents. He studies, and all these were phone calls, by the way, so they're going to read like bullet points, so I do apologize. He studies viruses, and there's no cure for this one. It is foolish. It is a foolish concept not to mandate masks in the city of Jenks. He is a longtime conservative Republican, but stands on the side of health and not politics. Asymptomatic people are spreading the virus around Jenks. We are stupid for basing our decisions off of low numbers in Jenks. He doesn't like Biden, but can appreciate the mask mandates. We are acting like selfish children who haven't learned our lesson. He preferred when Jenks was a small town. He doesn't appreciate change. He wants to be able to live his life and not be told to stay home because he's at risk because of his age. He made a comment that he could have been arrested at Jenks because he was frustrated with a younger gentleman for coughing all over the place and he was not wearing a mask. Mr. Dan Smith, who is a Tulsa resident and business owner, not happy with the fact there's no mask ordinance. Us not having a mask ordinance will get Tulsa sick, and many people who live in Jenks, work in Jenks, shop in Tulsa, getting Tulsans sick. Sick Jenks residents will take hospital beds in Tulsa. Jenks not doing anything will not help mitigate the pandemic. He says the company he runs will not do any business in Jenks because of this. Mary Newman, Tulsa resident, son works in Jenks. Disappointed there's no mask ordinance. Masks not only help to keep Jenks safe, but Tulsa too. A mask mandate takes courage.
Can we stop just a moment? Brandon, I need you to take your mask off because you're muffling. I can't hear the syllables.
All right.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you.
I would agree.
Where do I stop?
Mr. Newman.
Mr. Newman, thank you. Disappointed no mask ordinance. Mask keep Jenks safe and Tulsa. Mask mandate takes courage, shows leadership needed in Oklahoma. John Peters, Jenks resident, opposes mask requirement, feels it should be left to the citizens. Business will lose out because people will go to places where masks aren't required to shop. Like, I think he specified people are going to Sand Springs right now from Tulsa. Veronica, I'm going to butcher this last name, I apologize. Veronica Hurdlebrink, Doesn't believe mask mandate should be mandated by law. Shouldn't be forced to wear one at work. They ask their customers if they would like them to wear one, but they only do if they agree. It should be up to the individual person or business. That's it.
Thank you, Brandon. All right, so we are going to move the city manager's report to the beginning here. We've got, as part of our update on the ongoing pandemic, we have Dr. Bruce Dart from the Tulsa Health Department with us tonight to give us an update. Dr. Dart, I'm going to throw it over to you first because I'm guessing you probably have somewhere to be, but we appreciate you being here tonight.
And thank you, Mayor, and thank you, members of the City Council. I appreciate being asked. And as you saw, I've heard from the previous comments, I know masks are a very divisive issue and not an easy one to talk about. So I really appreciate the fact that you're having this conversation because I know how much all of you care about your community and the members who all live in Jenks. And can I give you a broad overview? As of today, we've had 9,417 COVID-19 cases in Tulsa County. The good news is that over 8,000 are recovered. We consider a little over 1,300 that are still active and have not yet recovered. The sad news is that we've had 101 deaths in Tulsa County for COVID-19. And how that extrapolates down to Jenks is that of those, and this is from data from late last week, of those over 9,000 cases, 6.5% of those are from the city of Jenks. Jenks has had over 500 cases themselves, and right now, early last week, our hospitals were really capacity was becoming stressed. That's gone down, which is great news. We've got about 94 individuals in the hospital right now. I couldn't tell you how many of those are actually from Jenks. The data we've got from Jenks is that of those 514 cases, we know that 29 have been hospitalized, but there's 139 that we don't have data on as far as hospitalization. So right now, in those 94 cases, I'm looking at our website. We've got there's 43 ICU beds out of 268 that are available. Half these patients are in acute care facilities, and 43 I think are actually in ICU. So the bottom line is that the virus continues to transmit very efficiently. There's so much that we know and don't know. Our recommendations in March and April are much different than what our recommendations were today. Frankly, if we, going back to March, if we knew what we knew back then, more than likely we would have recommended cloth-based coverage way back in March. And back then, as you recall, we had a severe shortage of PPE. We were concerned about healthcare providers not having the tools that keep themselves safe. And frankly, we just didn't know how really the pathology behind the virus as much as we do today. We didn't know how well it was spread, how easy it is, and we didn't know how it affected all people. And right now we know that there's quite a few asymptomatic cases. So this virus is so strange. I mean, most people that get a virus, everyone gets sick. While with COVID-19, we have so many people who are asymptomatic, which means that they have the infection, they're shedding virus, they're infectious, but they're not ill physically, or they're very, very mildly ill. And then we run the gamut to people who are severely ill or hospitalized. Right now, the average hospital stay for each COVID patient is about 7.1 days, which is really varied. And it was early on, of course, that was much higher. Now we're seeing younger, healthier people become ill. Early on in the pandemic, it was more of our at-risk population. It was people over 65, people with immunocompromised conditions, people with underlying health conditions. But now we're seeing that younger population become ill. The vast majority of our, I think 77% of the cases for the month of July were all younger than 50, 40% of those were younger than 35. So it's really, this virus is not discriminating. It doesn't really care who you are. It's a hitchhiker, and it has the opportunity. It's going to hitchhike from person to person. That's really what's been happening. And I understand I've heard, since I've been talking about this, I've heard from a lot of people, as you may imagine, and people with strong feelings about both sides of the issue. And, I'm being taken to task for recommending that we mandate masks. I'm being taken to task for not recommending that we mandate masks. It's a tough issue that you're all have to deal with, and I really empathize with that. And I get, I do get the anger behind it. This is a virus that 6-7 months ago, we knew nothing about it. And our lives were fairly normal, and then boom, in the span of 6 months, it's taking control over everything. And when people lose control, it's normal reaction to become angry and frightened, and to really voice that anger and those feelings. So I understand how people feel about this, but right now, with the lack of vaccine and strong clinical therapies, we can't prevent it, we can't cure it. And so the only tools we have to prevent transmission are tools that really affect human behavior. And I think that's the public part of public health. It's very much a public profession that I work in. And so those tools that we have to limit transmission simply are what we call the 3 W's. And that's watch your distance, wear your mask, and wash your hands. And if we don't, and everybody has a role to play in that, and everybody can step up and be a part of the solution, and do these things to not only take care of themselves, but take care of their loved ones, take care of their neighbors, take care of people that they encounter in the community. And Jenks, Jenks is a special place for me. I'm a swimmer. I swim in the Jenks Aquatic Center, which is a magnificent facility. So I'm in Jenks a lot. Haven't been lately, of course, because of the pandemic, but it's an amazing place. And as I said, it's being affected by the virus. 6.5% of our cases are from Jenks, so we know that it's transmitting very efficiently. I've got a breakdown of those who so far are affected, and frankly, the 2 age groups mirrors the county and the rest of the state data. Our 2 biggest age groups with the largest number of cases in Jenks are those between 18 and 35, and those between 36 and 49, and then 50-64 brings up another large group. So our most at-risk population, we only have 24 cases, which is great. So people right now, people who are really at highest risk early in the pandemic, they're doing a great job of taking care of themselves. If they do go out, they're obviously masked because we're not getting a huge number of cases. And so it's a group that wants to re-engage in life. And frankly, we're recommending people wear masks so that we can get our freedom back. We can get our freedom to go out and re-engage in our life and go back to work and go to restaurants and do things with our family and friends again, so that we can do it and we stay safe. And we've heard so much about places like bars or restaurants being issues and being a source of spread. Well, here in Tulsa County so far, early on, as we reopened after the Memorial Day holiday, we were seeing quite a few cases attributed to bars and restaurants, and we spoke to so many bar and restaurant owners, and they really stepped up and I think done a great job of protecting their staff and their clients. And the White House recommendation was to close bars and shut down restaurants at 25% capacity. And frankly, that's not our big concern in Tulsa County. Our biggest events that produce cases in the past few weeks have been weddings and funerals, camps, sporting events. Of course, we're still seeing cases in long-term care and child care facilities. So, and those are places where people go and gather as well. I think many of those issues take place outdoors, and so we know that we thought outdoors was safer, but it's not safe enough because people are still being infected and exposed after being in those type of settings that we at one time thought were safer. So, this virus, the only way we're going to, I think, until we get our vaccine and until we get a therapy that we know actually works, the only tools we have are those 3 W's: watch your distance, wear your mask, and wash your hands. And we're recommending that everyone in Tulsa County do that so that we can stop the spread, we can grind this virus into the dust, we can flatten the curve down, and we can all get back to normal. And I think the more that we all step up in Tulsa County and do these things, the sooner than normal, we're going to be able to get back to. So this is where we're at. We have a novel virus that nobody has any immunity to, and the tragic part is that, you know, when most people are infected with the virus, they produce antibodies. They're immune to that virus, but we're finding that with COVID-19, antibodies fade, or we call them waning antibodies, 3 to 4 months after being infected. So, you know, the hope around achieving herd immunity isn't going to happen more than likely until we get a vaccine that's distributed around the same time, so that we can create more immunity in our communities here in Tulsa County. So that it seems like every time we think we have a solution, this virus adapts, and we have to find a new solution. So this is where we're at. You know, I'm happy to answer any questions. One thing before I do, I want to point out is that, you know, I've heard a lot about, well, let's, you know, I don't know why we're so concerned because the death rate is so low. Well, you know, we've had over 100 people die in Tulsa County. So I guess, you know, your perspective is that, are you one of those people who are mildly ill or severely ill? And then, frankly, we're still learning more about long-term healthcare impacts of those who are infected with COVID. Many people recover and they're fine. Other people are still dealing with health issues from being infected throughout this response. I mean, we've had people I know. I have a personal friend who's a marathon runner that hasn't been able to run since he was infected in April. He can't climb a stair. He's still having respiratory issues. So we're finding there's cardiovascular issues long-term associated with this for some people, neurologic issues. Some people still haven't had their sense of taste and smell back, and then respiratory issues. So we're still learning about what that long-term healthcare impact is. And as time goes on, we'll learn more, just like we have with this virus. And, you know, as we've learned more, the recommendations have changed, which I know have been confusing for people. But that's the part of not having any knowledge about a virus that didn't exist, and suddenly it does, and we've had to learn on the fly. And so hopefully, as we've learned, we've gotten more a deeper understanding, and has improved our recommendations to mitigate the spread and keep people safe. That's all we're trying to do here is just keep people safe. So, you know, I can't tell you what to do. We can only make recommendations. I believe masks are a huge tool in preventing spread. And as I know it, as difficult as this conversation can be, I'm happy you're having it, and I think it's the right conversation to have. And you all have tough jobs, and I respect the responsibility that you've got. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have going forward.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Dart, do you have any kind of medical statistics on people that are wearing masks that are getting sick? Because I've heard a lot from constituents that when they wear masks, it's like they're breathing in their own carbon dioxide.
Well,
and
that's misinformation that has been spread. I mean, there's a lot of information around that supposedly people breathe in their own carbon dioxide, and it messes with their blood chemistry. It creates a toxic issue. That's misinformation. That's not true. And so we did today. We had a press conference today. We do weekly, and just we found some data from people. We had a lot of questions about how do these masks really work, and are they really effective? So some information that I talked about today in the press conference that was about masks and how they obstruct. So we talked about that 6-foot distance guidelines. Well, without a mask, and this was some research done by Florida Atlantic University's College of Engineering and Science that utilized a method to assess the effectiveness of face masks in obstructing droplets. So their studies showed that without a mask, droplets could travel as far as 8 feet. With a bandana, they travel 3 feet 7 inches. With the folded cotton handkerchief, they travel 1 foot 3 inches. With the stitched quilting cotton mask, which is the 2-ply mask that we've been talking about, they travel 2.5 inches. And with the cone style mask, droplets travel about 8 inches. So, you know, it's not perfect. There's still has a capability of some droplet getting out, but as we know, this is transmitted person to person by droplet respiratory spread, and these droplets usually are pretty heavy, so you cough and they drop down to the ground, and the mask stops it from getting away from you and exposing that person in front of you. So, but there's been a lot of information, I know, misinformation about wearing a mask to make you sick, and you know, things that I've been asked about, you know, carbon dioxide toxicity, it doesn't happen. Taking, you know, getting, we recommend that you have more than one mask. These cloth masks, you can get viral particle on the mask. We recommend that you take it off, you wash it overnight, you have keep at least 2 masks, and you clean those intermittently so that you can keep yourself safe. Because these can become dirty as well. So we're not saying, you know, there's no perfect answer to this. This is just the best answer that we've got right now until we have vaccine and clinical therapy.
Thank you. Any other council members or staff members have questions for Dr. Dart? Can you talk a little bit, this is kind of piggybacking on the Vice Mayor's question, can you talk a little bit about mask hygiene and proper use of masks, you know, the potential for them to be misused, and how we can avoid that?
So, and that's a great question. And so, many people, I think, you see people wearing masks like this, below their nose, maybe cover their mouth, and we know that that doesn't help you because we still exhale droplets through our nasal passages. Masks really should cover the nose, cover the mouth, be tightly on the sides, so that droplets don't become aerosolized. And our concern is that when we cough really hard, if droplets do become aerosolized, they travel further, they're in smaller drops, so they're not as heavy, so they don't drop to the ground. So the mask prevents all of that, but wearing a mask is extremely important. And it's important that you clean your mask between days, which is really a pain. I mean, I do it, and it's not fun, but it's something you have to do. And you take your mask off by taking the straps and folding it and trying not to touch the surface at all and laying it down on hopefully a clean surface. There's nothing sterile, but cleaning the mask between use is really important because they, as I said, they can contain viral particles or other infectious particles, and you can transmit through your mask if you don't take care of that material that you're using.
What do you know about how, you know, obviously Tulsa passed a mask mandate a couple weeks ago. I don't know exactly when, but how's that going? Have they managed to make a difference yet? Can you tell yet?
So I think it's a little early to tell. So just the past 2 days, we've started to see a slight decrease in our 479 averages. Our 14-day case trend is still slightly going upward, but it was going upward at a spike, and now it's just trending in more of a surge, which is good. Now, whether we can attribute that to masking, honestly, I don't know. But the data we found that if a vast majority of people in the community wear masks, you see a very specific percentage decrease in your weekly case trend. So and as you might have heard, there's been some delay in laboratory reporting. The labs have been just slammed. Yesterday, we know that there was 22,000 lab tests in the queue waiting to be tested. And also the state had an issue with their infectious disease database. It's called FIDO, and there was an issue with the automation of the database, which frankly, I don't know what that means, is what they told us, but it was resulting in a delay in case reports. So while we're starting to see that slight decrease this week, it could be even more or it could be less because we don't know how many of those cases we're getting, are they current or are they an older case? Now the state's talents are being caught up, so next week, Mayor, we should have a much better idea and be able to answer your question much more directly.
Okay, thank you.
Long answer, I know, I'm sorry for that.
No, that's helpful. And, you know, I think, you know, in the spring, I think we were kind of lucky that it reached Oklahoma as flu season was kind of wrapping up. Because there's this idea that with flu season that's going to be, there's going to be more spread. And I think we were all surprised to see it spread as much as it has throughout the summer months. Recognizing that you don't know all that much, we're still learning about this virus as we go. What are we expecting the colder months to be like as we approach flu season?
So, you're right. We had hoped this would act like flu and have a seasonal component where it's heat and sunlight would break it down so while it might still be circulating, it's a very inefficient transmitter. And as we know, that didn't happen. And this thing started in the winter, so we know that it's going to be here during the winter as well. Now come fall, as you know, generally October, the flu season starts. We start giving shots late September, early October. So this fall and into the winter, more than likely we're going to have these two respiratory viruses circulating. Good news is that we will have a vaccine for influenza, and there'll be several strains in that vaccine. With COVID, we're not going to have a vaccine this fall, and so we're going to have continue to have the same problem with a vaccine that we have little immunity to, still going to be circulating throughout the county, in addition to influenza as well. And both these viruses are a risk to anybody. So most people that I've had the flu. I don't know if any of you have had the flu. Influenza. You feel like you're going to die. It's not, even, and so when you're vaccinated, you can still get infected, but usually your illness is much more mild. But with COVID, we don't have the luxury of that yet. So, and we don't know how people react when they have COVID-19. We've seen the spectrum from not ill at all to pass away. So it'll be the same this fall, but you add two viruses instead of one, and that ramps up the urgency to mitigate spread.
And this is my last question, then I'll turn it over to other people. So we hear about the numbers, sometimes the confirmed cases and also deaths. And some people say that they're undercounted. Some people say that they're overcounted. Some people say that they're counted. That one individual is counted more than once. How are people being counted in our area in specific? And how accurate do you feel like those numbers are?
Which is a really good question. I know there's some confusion because people get multiple tests, and because many employers want a negative test for employees to come back to work. So each case, I said we had over 9,000 cases. Each one of those cases is counted once. So each case is unique, even if they've been tested after their initial positive test. So if someone has 3 or 4 tests, they're only counted once. And we talked to physicians, and physicians, physicians are the ones who fill out the death record for these patients, and they take great care to fill out correctly, and they won't call the COVID-19 case as the reason for death unless that person actually passed away due to their COVID infection. So we know that there's probably other people who have passed away that had COVID, but there's really other health issues that caused their demise, and physicians only put down COVID as the cause if they feel that was the primary purpose for that individual passing away.
Thank you. Any other questions from council or from staff? Well, Dr. Dart, thanks for being here tonight. We appreciate it. We know you're a busy guy.
You are too. You guys all have great responsibilities, so thank you for this conversation. I didn't envy your choices, but I appreciate the fact that you want to have that conversation. That's all we can ask people to do. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or anything else comes up, please give me a call, email me. I'm happy. I'm at your beck and call whenever you need it. So have a great rest of your evening, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks again.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chief Arthur, Chief Ostrom, Mr. Shrout, do you want to, is there anything you can add to how the city of Jenks is handling the pandemic and where we are?
I would defer to the public safety professionals on what we've been doing, but we've pretty much been kind of steady as she goes in terms of what we've been doing. I know that we communicated with council and certainly with the city staff that we had a city hall employee, a person who offices at city hall, test positive last week, and that person was at city hall up through Tuesday of last week, and we didn't find out about the positive result until Friday. And luckily, back in March or April, we put in an order for a machine that makes this disinfectant spray that can be added to old fire equipment that can be used to spray, and City Hall has one of these machines, and the aquarium has one. I think that the fire department might have multiple. And we were planning to start spraying City Hall every single morning. So we ordered this back in March or April. We didn't receive it until recently, and we've been making this disinfectant spray. And so we sprayed down. We actually moved the schedule, moved it up and started spraying Friday. Sprayed twice. But, you know, obviously with someone that tested positive, we got the results Friday, but they had already been in City Hall and been on Tuesday. But, you know, we're doing our best. We continue to reduce, you know, or eliminate in-person meetings. We've been utilizing Teams, and we encourage people, if they can, to work from home. I think that this specific instance of a positive test is kind of a wake-up call for us again. You know, it's easy over obviously a 5-month period to become a little bit lax in how we're dealing just on a day-to-day level, interacting with each other. And I think this is, it's unfortunate, but it was a good wake-up call that this thing is still here and, you know, still a threat. So we continue to staff wears masks when we're at work in the building, unless we're in our office. Reducing in-person meetings or eliminating them. And then at the aquarium, you know, the aquarium was shut down March 16th or 17th, reopened at the beginning of May with reservations only, and then opened up to the public in mid-May. And all staff has been wearing masks at the aquarium facility. And, you know, over the time period from mid-May when we opened back up without reservations through really up until this week, you know, I get a daily report on attendance and all revenue. And so we're down about 40% in attendance and similarly down about 40% in revenue as well. And Kenny and his staff have made the decision to go ahead and require masks for all guests that visit the aquarium, everyone over the age of 12. And they chose the age of 12 because they thought it was somewhat impractical. They had to choose some age. I mean, you're not going to put a mask on a baby if you bring a baby, but there's a lot of kids that go through there, and 12 is the cutoff for children's pricing. And so it's pretty obvious if someone is under or over the age of 12. We'll be providing everyone that enters the aquarium, if they don't have a mask, we'll give them a mask. And it's a tough decision, and we know, I mean, Councilor Box held a town hall meeting on Saturday, and, you know, the room was evenly split between people who wanted a mask mandate, people who didn't want a mask mandate. And I think that, you know, what we see is pretty similar, that, you know, generally about half the people don't want to wear a mask, half the people want to wear a mask. And so, you know, Kenny and the aquarium staff are kind of in the unenviable position of trying to make a decision. And no matter what decision they make, they're going to receive some sort of backlash. But they just felt that from the feedback they've received, there's some people that visit the aquarium and see all these people that aren't wearing masks and feel that it's unsafe. And, you know, we just make the assumption, we don't know, but that maybe that 40% decline partially maybe is due to people not feeling safe visiting an indoor facility. And so Kenny's hoping that instituting a mask requirement at that facility will maybe make people feel more safe and more likely to attend, but who knows? But, you know, I'd say we give it at least a couple months and see how that goes and compare the numbers and you know, informally survey people that are attending. But yeah, we're kind of continuing the same routine that we've had for months. You know, we're really thankful for police and fire and public works for everything they've done throughout this pandemic. But I don't know if the chiefs have anything to add to that. Chief Arthur, no, do you have anything to add? I mean, no is fine, but I can't hear anything.
I apologize. I had to get up front, boss. I would just say that we redouble our efforts, and I echo everything you said. Chief Ostrom has done a great job in keeping us informed, even more so. And Katie, the messenger for us, done a great job, and so forth. So I just say it was a good wake-up call, and you know, we keep in constant contact and just really work on cleaning, the simple things you think, but to see my guys and gals walk around the station and really spray door handles and do that several times a day and empty trash and do the things that you wouldn't, think might be beneath an officer out there. That's the first things they're doing. And I think we attribute that to maybe not, getting sick. So I think just redoubling our efforts and being careful. And you have a tendency after a while, like you said, to let it slide. But I think they've done a really good job, and everyone in the city. So.
Thank you, Chief.
Mayor, the only thing I would add as far as on the fire side is just kind of an update for you guys. We've had numerous contacts with known COVID patients with our emergency responders. And at this point, we've been 100% compliant with PPE and have had no contaminations from that. So no one's tested positive in the fire department yet for that. So just a good testament to the guys having good PPE practice. And we do have plenty of PPE available for all the staff, police and fire, emergency responders. So we're doing very well there as well. So just other than that, just working like normal.
That's great. Great news. Thank you, Chief. All right. Any questions on that from council before we move on to the? Might as well let you do the rest of your city manager's report, Christopher. Any discussion before we? Any other discussion on that before we move on to the rest of his report? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. So we kind of have this unique situation in that. As you know, the city, JPWA, and JAA are three distinct separate legal entities, and we kind of have, we're dealing with different problems because, as I mentioned, the aquarium is, revenue's down about 40%, attendance is down about 40%. What we're seeing is that when people do visit, we're still down in other areas of revenue. Outside of gate attendance, but for instance, memberships are down only something like 25%. The fish food sales and some of the other opportunities that we have for people to spend money are down significantly. They're down less than the overall attendance. So what we see is that when people do come through the door, they're very willing to pay for these experiences, whether it's feeding the fish or buying things at the gift shop or buying things at the cafe. Kenny had a conversation with the gift shop owner recently, and he said things are going very well, that revenue is going well. And so I think what we find is when people want to come visit, they want to have a good time, they want to spend their money. It's just a matter of how can we get people to come to the aquarium to begin with. And so, like I said, maybe the masks will help, maybe it won't, and maybe we just have to, this is just going to be a really bad year. But we'll get into that a little bit more at our JAA meeting in 2 weeks. But on the city side, the sales and use tax is actually doing very well. Our July sales and use tax check was our third highest ever. Our May sales tax check was the second highest sales tax check ever. And then, as we had discussed previously in February, pre-COVID, we had our highest sales tax check ever. So in the last 6 months, we've had our top three largest sales tax checks. Luckily, one was before COVID, so we know that economically the city's doing very well. And then 2 of those checks have come post-COVID. We usually get those checks within the first week or 2 of each month, and so we'll have something to report to you hopefully within the next couple of days for our August sales tax check. The Jenks Public Works Authority, people are still buying water and flushing their toilets and using the utility system, so that's been pretty level. So the organization economically is doing great. The Public Works Authority is doing well, and the aquarium is struggling. And so I don't see that changing in the near term, and just hopefully people feel more comfortable getting out. Hopefully it's safe to get out here in the next 6 to 9 months, but I anticipate that revenue will be down at the aquarium for another 6 to 9 months. Just a couple other things to touch on. I sent out an email last week. The U.S. Census is going on right now, and everyone was mailed their, I don't know what exactly the term is, but, their voluntary response form. 10 years ago, we had the highest response rate in the Tulsa metro area at something like 75%. We're getting close to that 75% number. I think we're at like 72% right now. I'm competitive, and I know all of you are competitive, and we aren't leading. We're a couple percentage points behind Broken Arrow, and we can't let them beat us. So if you can, encourage anyone that lives in Jenks to fill out the census, and we have a lot more information we can share with you if you think it would be helpful. But it's really important because billions of dollars flow to states and eventually to cities because of this census count. So it really is important that we count each and every person that lives in Jenks. We have right now with the legislature, they are they ended their session, but they're going through legislative interim studies right now. Robert Carr and I had a conversation with Representative Sims about just the inspection fees that cities are charged by ODOT. And so, when we have ODOT projects like Main Street, the Churchill Park Trail, we have one coming up. We have one currently under construction with the 111th and Elwood intersection. And so, you have the construction costs, but then there's inspectors that go in that inspect the work that the construction crews do. And ODOT used to have inspectors on staff, and then cities, when they would have an ODOT project in their town, would just pay the cost basically of the ODOT inspectors and their time. And now those inspectors, with whatever the state funding situation is, those inspectors have gone away, and now that's an outsourced. Those jobs are outsourced, and so we're kind of at the mercy of consultants. And for instance, on the Churchill Park Trail project, the trail itself is something like a $300,000 project, but our inspection fees are like $72,000, and that's pretty exorbitant. We would expect those to come in at 5 or 10%, but we discussed this with Representative Sims, and he's actually doing an interim study on that with the legislature. So we're really thankful for him for listening to us, and going to delve into this and see if there's anything that they can do. We've had kind of switching gears. We've had numerous meetings on a 73-acre parcel that's right across, just north of the Walmarts, the Glenpool Walmart. So 121st, just west of Highway 75. Over the years, we've had quite a bit of interest from developers. Steve Wallman is the commercial broker representing the owner of the land. And he says right now he has 3 or 4 developers that are interested in that property, and they're interested in putting big box retail there. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago with one developer. We have another meeting that we're setting up as we speak, hopefully to have that meeting next week. And so, we're finding with, COVID, some things are down, obviously, but others continue to move forward. And one of those is a lot of construction projects. Residential construction is really moving forward. We've seen a lot of residential building permits come through. And obviously in economic development, developers are continuing to come visit with us about different properties around town. So beyond that, the B Street sidewalk project has gotten started. You can see some of the work. They poured some of the concrete for the sidewalk over at 5th and B. That's complete, and they're moving down. I think they're in front of the school now, pouring the sidewalk, so that's exciting. And we had the Melody Lane ribbon cutting last week. I believe that was on Thursday. If you haven't driven by recently, the Melody Lane Center, just west of Elm Street on Main, was totally redone. It looks fantastic. I know that Councilor Lynn has worked with Josh McFarland and Red Dog Construction on that project, and so I think it really looks great, and we're happy that they've kind of repurposed that old building, and I think there's even more good stuff to come from that development. So beyond that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. And kudos to Councilor Lynn and Red Dog Construction on Melody Lane. It does look really good. Any questions from council for Mr. Shrout? All right. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to our first order of business, consideration and appropriate action relating to request for approval of the consent agenda. Are there any questions or motions on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. We will pull item 2 and move on to item 3, request to reappoint Carol Minden to the Planning Commission for a term ending on May 1st, 2022. Ms. Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and staff. This staff report covers about 3 or 4 pages. We had 4 different board members that have been serving the city of Jenks. We have Ms. Carol Minden, Planning Commission. We have Mr. Eric Inyart, who's been serving the Board of Adjustment. We also have Mr. Ricky Patel and Mr. John Brown. Mr. John Brown is a reappointment. These items are items 3, 4, 5, and 6. I did write 1 staff report. Mr. Larry Hinkst has been serving on the Board of Adjustment for many years, and he'll be stepping down. And you will take each one of these items individually, but staff has recommended approval and of each of these, and Mr. Patel will be stepping in with your approval into the position of Mr. Hinkst for Board of Adjustment. So in regards to Carol, if you want to look on page 113, it does talk about her years of service. And so we have 2 from Planning Commission, Carol Minden and John Brown, and Eric Inyart on Board of Adjustment, and Mr. Patel would be a new appointment. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
All right. Thank you. Any questions on starting with item 3?
No, sir.
I have a comment, if I could. I served on Planning Commission with Carol Minden, and her professionalism and preparedness have always been top notch. So, I would highly recommend her reappointment at this time.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
All right. I agree. She does a great job of chairing those meetings. That is a hard position to be in a lot of the time. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. On to item 4, request to reappoint John Brown to the Planning Commission for a term ending on May 1st, 2022.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Item 5, request to reappoint Eric Inyart to the Board of Adjustment for a term ending on May 1st, 2022.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Item 6, request to appoint Ricky Patel to the Board of Adjustment for a term ending on May 1st, 2022.
So moved?
Second.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Thank you to all these individuals for their service to the city, and special thanks to Larry Hingst for his decades of service on the Board of Adjustment and on the City Council. We'll be recognizing him more formally at a later date.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say, just from the planning perspective, you have an outstanding planning commission and you have an outstanding Board of Adjustment, and I thank you all for your leadership in appointing them. They really do a great job, and I appreciate them very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marseille.
All right, and we will move on to item 7, request to approve JZ 20658 SUP 115, a request by Wallace Engineering for a specific use permit to allow for an indoor skydiving facility. General location in southeast corner, East Aquarium Place and South Aquarium Drive. Ms. Hilton, you're up again.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and staff. This item is a very exciting project. I think we have several members on this team that have been moving and working to get this approved. I think Mr. Jim Beach and Mr. Jack Randall, who is the owner-developer. This is a 75-foot structure. It's going to be adjacent to the river, adjacent to the aquarium. It has two wind tunnels. So if you're looking at your packet, I know I kind of jumped ahead. When I really started understanding the project and what's being built, it was really exciting to me. So on page 118 of your report, it kind of goes to the planning data, and I just want to point out to you that at this time there has been no public comment on this item. The Planning Commission did vote 6-1 to approve the SUP 115 per staff recommendations, and I believe one person was absent. Yeah, that's the one vote that did not vote for it. So it is an indoor skydiving facility. It is the current zoning, and I kind of explained this, but I want to say to the applicant and to the City Council, there's no issue with the zoning. If you look at that map at the top, it kind of shows that parcel is in green, but if you understand that area, the line kind of goes right down the middle, and that should all be pink. So the zoning is actually should be CS, and staff is working on the inside to look at all of our specific use permits and make sure that they are accurate on the INCOG zoning map. So like I said, this is lot 2, block 1 of the aquarium campus, plat number 6614. It's about 1.33 acres. The number of stories allowed in this SUP is 4, with a total of 75 feet tall. Let's move on. On page 120, I began to show you some of the background information, but also it talks about what the City Council can look for and should consider when they are looking at a specific use permit. I think that this organization has done a really good job of putting this package together. There were some comments, and we had an internal staff meeting, and then we had a TAC meeting, and these comments came out of there. At this time, all comments have been resolved, so that was another issue and a question. We've been working very, very diligently with the applicant and with the owner to get all of these comments resolved. We have Planning Commission, when they made the approval, and I'm looking at page 123, when they recommended approval, it was per staff comments, and at that time we had some outstanding things. But the draft access easement is included in your packet, and thank you, Mr. Beach, for getting that to us. And then there was a question about access for public safety. Originally, it was on the south, and we realized that that was going to be an issue for the aquarium. It got moved to the north. That's where that access easement comes into play. And then the other issue is we were concerned about access into the aquarium along their north boundary, but all of that has been resolved. So the last sentence is in blue, and it says on 7/20 this was removed during the site plan revision, and this request is being handled internally with staff approval, and we have come to a consensus and it has been worked out. So I just wanted to make sure that you all understood, and that anyone listening understands that has all been resolved. On page 124, it actually starts the SUP document. So we have all of that information, and I believe Brandon pulled up on page 127 of your packet. This is just a general idea. This is one wind tunnel, and this particular project will have 2 wind tunnels. This applicant is excited about bringing, I'm sure, I don't know how COVID will impact it, he can tell you, but he's excited about bringing professional teams in for competitions. If you look on page 128 is the actual staff report, or sorry, the site plan. Shows the building and the location. This is between the aquarium and the Holiday Inn. You can see that little curve around, it's facing the river there, but it would be to the north. If you continue on page 130, this is an elevation, but Brandon's going to pull up here in a minute a different elevation that's been updated as of this week. They've been working with W Design to do the architectural plans, and that's an outstanding group to work with, along with Wallace Engineering. They're doing a great job on this project. Been working with the city and the city attorney to get these final items. There you go. And this is the revised. I'm going to let Mr. Jack Randall speak on the actual design of it. And before he takes over, do you have any questions for me?
Marcel, did I read somewhere, or maybe I'm just dreaming, was there somewhere in some of the packet that talked about it being 5 stories?
It is 4 stories and 75 feet.
Okay, then I guess I've dreamt that. I was thinking for some reason I read somewhere that it was 5 stories. So that's fine. Thank you.
5 is right beside 4, and sometimes I don't type correctly, so maybe you saw it.
Maybe it's probably me.
All right, thank you. Looks really good. Does anyone have any questions for Marseille? All right, well then let's welcome Mr. Randall to the meeting. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. Nick, do you want to start this?
I certainly can. This is Nick Lombardi, who's working on the project with the city, and my only comments are that the city has been absolutely fantastic to work with thus far, and we look forward to getting this project out of the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardi. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lombardi or Mr. Randall? All right, Mr. Randall, do you have any anything you'd like to add before we vote?
Sure, Robert, I can. What you're looking at in that latest elevation, you'll see the two exterior terraces for dining overlooking the city that we had talked about back in March when we all met there, March 2nd, when we could still all be in public together. You'll see those on the exterior elevation. As Marseille did mention, the flight chamber is actually the tallest one in the world. It is actually also the largest one in the world that will be in play here, and the only twin tunnel design on the planet. So what this does for us internationally, it gives us the opportunity to be able to bring in televised World Cup indoor skydiving events that are held throughout Europe and the Middle East now, right here to the greater Tulsa and Jenks metro area, which could see a pretty good impact here on local spending. And we are purpose built to allow for that sort of thing. So it's a major impact piece here. We're also the only one of these facilities to include full restaurant and tavern services. We will do beer and wine sales. That is on the 3rd floor. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the proposed floor plans yet, but we're working through that right now, making adjustments. So this should have quite a bit of impact here on revenue in the local Jenks area.
Fantastic. Well, it's a beautiful design. We're really excited that it's coming to Jenks. Thank you.
We're excited to be here. Thank you very much for having us.
All right. Any questions or comments from council on this item?
Is it something that you would ever expand on? I mean, just in looking at the land area between the two facilities, it looked like it was kind of squeezed in there, and I'm sure you're making the most out of it that you can with parking, but is it something that in the future you would ever be able to expand on?
Right now, no. This facility, the initial box drawing that you saw early on with one of the first elevations, what we had to get initially from Erodium is we had to have an envelope for the proper containment and use of their equipment that makes the tunnels function themselves. And then we had to design the rest of the building around said equipment so that we could allow for our service areas, our restaurant, viewing areas, and things of that nature. So that's as big as this would ever get.
Okay.
I'm sure, I know Nick and I have kicked back and forth. If you guys ever put the low water dam in, we'd be happy to put in some sea-doo or kayak rentals, but that's in the backyard. I don't see that happening this week. No, this is as big as it would get. Now, in a larger market, with something like the size of the Houston area, you may put in 4 or 5 tunnels.
Okay.
So you'd be doing a larger thing based on population density.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you.
This should fit really well for the area that we have. Everybody wishes your lot was always bigger, but this works for what we've got.
Okay, well, that's kind of what I was trying to get at, but it gives you plenty of room inside for the restaurant, restrooms, offices, and whatever, and for the tunnels themselves. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. The design has come together very well.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've spoken with some members of the skydiving community, and they're actually excited about this. They're already talking about forming lines to get in there to be the first one in the facility when it opens. I'm talking to skydivers and instructors alike, and they're very excited to have this come to our city. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, anyone else?
Sure, Mayor, I'd make a motion we approve item number 7.
Second.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Very excited about this one. All right, we'll move on to item 8. Request to approve ordinance number 1526 relating to JZ 20658 SUP 115.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Item 9, request to approve emergency clause for ordinance number 1526, making it effective immediately upon passage.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Mr. Randall and Mr. Lombardi, thank you again for your work on this, and thank you to staff for working on this as well. I know this has been a team effort.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. We really appreciate the support with this.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming to Jenks. We think it's a great place. We think you'll like it.
We like Jenks, which is why we came to you guys.
Good.
We're excited to try it out. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
very much.
All right.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you. You have a good evening.
You too.
All right, let's move on to item 10, request to approve intergovernmental cross-deputization agreement between the United States, the Muskogee Creek Nation, and political subdivisions of the state of Oklahoma. Ms. Nowlin and Chief Arthur, you're listed on here. Who wants to take it away?
I think I can do a brief introduction and then hand it over to Chief Arthur. As you all may be aware, about 4 weeks ago, the Supreme Court reached a decision in the McGirt versus Oklahoma case. And they ruled in that case that the Creek Reservation in eastern Oklahoma had never been disestablished by Congress. And as a result, the state of Oklahoma and the political subdivisions, which means the municipalities, have no criminal jurisdiction over tribal members for crimes committed in Indian country, which the Creek Reservation that we are on is part of Indian country. The city of Jenks is entirely within the Creek Reservation. This means that now our police department, without this cross deputization, has no authority to arrest or other, our municipal court has no jurisdiction over tribal member defendants, as well as when we have a tribal member victim, it also creates jurisdictional issues. Chief Arthur and I have looked at this proposed agreement for a couple of years, knowing that this decision was out, possibly coming down the pipe. So it's something we've thought was a good idea for a long time. What my memo does not highlight is that if we do not enter this agreement, we could really be facing some serious liability and potential public safety ramifications. Right now, our officers do not have any kind of authority as far as a tribal member suspect to do anything more than essentially detain them until an authorized police force like the Light Horse with the Creek Nation arrive on the scene, or the FBI, the feds. So if something were to happen while they are detaining these suspects, some kind of use of force or other issue, we could really be facing some serious liability. And of course, we want to be able to enforce public safety here in the city of Jenks. So that's kind of the legal outlook on this. I think Chief Arthur will be able to talk a little bit more about the practical implications and the operational issues here. So, but let me know as we talk if you have questions for me.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, and Mayor, members of council. This is, first of all, I'd like to thank a couple people in the audience here you might not recognize. One of them is, they're both, I know one of them, and I'm not sure about the other one, so I might have him introduce himself. But the first one, young lady sitting in the second row there, is Detective Teresa Wisnerly. Got that correct?
Wisnerly, yeah.
Okay, I was close. And the gentleman that is with, I assume, is with you as well, and you are?
I am Detective Simeon Lee with Light Horse.
I appreciate both of them, and the reason I didn't know the second gentleman was the fact that Chief Hawkins was going to be here, and I know the chief quite well. We've been talking over the last several years about this very proposal and agreement, and I think he might be a little under the weather, so he sent us a couple of great people. We've had a relationship with Light Horse as long as I've been here, going on 10 years now, which has been great, and this case has slowly but steadily worked its way through the court system, and the chief has always touched base with me in addition to the regular things that we do with their department, which would be lately quite a bit. They're right across there, and they have a pretty large department right there now that the casino is there and operational and so forth, and along with some of the protests and the gatherings lately, we've been working jointly on some things to provide some support back and forth. They have always been great partners with us, and even without this agreement in place, I know personally, even the last several years, that I've utilized them for backup when I've stopped the car. Sometimes the cars continue on into Tulsa, and they work that area and so forth, and I'll give you a little background about their jurisdiction and so forth. But we've had a relationship that I've been confident in for a number of years, and Chief Hawkins as well. Chief Hawkins actually lives in our city, and so that's an interesting thing. And so when this case was moving its way through, we've continued with that relationship. And Teresa and I have been keeping tabs on it and briefing Mr. Shroud as well. He's heard about it since probably the day he came in. And we've just kind of kept it there because we knew at some point it may reach us in this way. And that is that the decision came down that has affected all of us and very abruptly. The good thing is we're prepared for it. And that is the fact that as they may answer some of your questions tonight a lot better than I can, they are the experts. And fortunately, they've had the surrounding area become part of their team and this cross-deputization agreement for a long time now. And so Jenks has kind of been there, kind of waiting to kind of join up with them at the right moment. And I think we're obviously here. They have been, and there's some questions that will come out here about jurisdictional issues and so forth. I will tell you, whether we cross-deputize or not, which I would firmly and strongly recommend we do, and Teresa would as well, is the fact that they already have jurisdiction here, and they have for a long time. They're cross-deputized with the Sheriff's Department and with most every major and agency around this area. They've been cross-deputized, and last night I understand they cross-deputized with Glenpool in a unanimous council decision last night. So our partners over there that we work with quite extensively. So I am a firm believer that they're the right partner, and this is essential. That will give us the ability to seamlessly work with them on those, like we indicated, maybe 10 or 15%. We're not really sure of the exact numbers, but even being exposed to one situation out there that we don't have jurisdiction on will cause us a lot of issues and so forth. So I'm happy to work with them on a more formal basis. Having said all of that, I don't know how far we want to get into the weeds and open up to questions from council and so forth. And I will let them probably be better able to answer some of that. Some of these things that we may get into, and Councilor Box contacted me this morning with some really great questions that I think will probably pop up here tonight as well. But I just think it's with the case gone through and so forth, the writing is there that we need that assistance. So having said all of that, wherever we want to start with questions.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Councilor Dyke. Just quickly, as I was looking through all the exhibits we have of all of these other cities that have joined, is there a reason we didn't do it earlier? Because I see one of them goes all the way back to 2000.
I didn't catch the last part.
Is there a reason that we did not sign this earlier, since many of these other cities did without the Supreme Court case?
Yeah.
One of the things I learned, I went to a training last week with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Whenever this agreement originated, here in Jenks, we did not have really any allotments. We didn't have much tribal land at all until the Riverwalk came about. And then I understand that this agreement was brought up whenever the Riverwalk was around, and that we did look at it and consider it, and it was rejected then. I don't know the reasoning. I wasn't around then. I don't know if Chief was or if you've heard. I do know, like we said, we had looked at it for a couple of years and hadn't, quite got the okay to put it forward to you. But I think all those many years was because Jenks really just didn't have tribal land at the time, so it wasn't a priority where all those other little towns did. We were kind of one of the last on the list in that way.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Teresa.
Yeah, and I don't think, just to expand on that, I don't think there wasn't any negative reason at all. Chief Hawkins has been here for a while now, as long as I can recall, and the prior chiefs before that have always been great partners. We've had a great relationship with them the entire time, and there wasn't any reason, I don't think, that Mr. Shroud or even Mr. Tinker before that had, other than the fact that we really just didn't think we really maybe needed as much back then, and we still had the partnership and so forth. So
I have a question on all of that, because let's talk about that just a little bit, because I've been here ever since Riverwalk was first talked about. That just because, and Teresa, I need your help here, just because the Creeks purchased the Riverwalk, it's not in the treaty. So there's a difference between purchasing and owning and what was in the treaty of the 1800s that was being addressed. So is that something?
I can speak to at least part of that. At least prior to this McGirt decision, the Riverwalk was not trust land. It was land that the tribe owns in fee, and essentially as a business entity was running a business. Now, what I can't tell you, and I haven't researched yet, is whether this McGirt decision changes the status, exactly what the full status is of that land now. Now that we are part of the reservation, we are part of the treaty lands, everything is. So the status of Riverwalk may have changed in some way at this point. And I don't even know if anyone can answer that question at this point or not, but I think she's seeing as someone there.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let the detective that has a lot more expertise.
Hi, I'm Teresa, investigator with Lightworks, like you said. No, to my understanding, the trust, it is, like she said, it is fee land. It is not in trust. That didn't change the status of the trust land portion of it. It just reestablished all the boundaries of the entire Creek Nation. So everything is now as it was almost treated before. Previously, it was treated like it was before when it was trust land. Like that was the area of jurisdiction for the natives. But now the boundaries are much larger.
Okay, well, that was where my confusion was, because when I looked at the McGirt thing, and I saw that all of Tulsa was in it, but yet we had developed that prior to the McGirt thing, and that it seemed like that it was just a purchase by the Creeks, not that it was in the tribal of the 1800s.
Right. And it didn't change it's not suddenly trust land. It's still how it was before. It just reestablished the outer boundaries. And so the McGirt decision specifically addressed the major crimes. However, everyone's trying to decide exactly where and the extent of what they're working with right now. We're waiting on a response, and I forget the name of it, I got it up here, for the mandate from the Supreme Court. So they come down to kind of, outline more specifically some of the other stuff. But like he's speaking of, I'm speaking on just behalf of the law enforcement portion, and our chief was working with him to, just have more partners in the community. And like he said, that we are with Tulsa, crossed with Tulsa, but our chiefs felt it a necessary, because we live in the community. We're from Glenpool, our chief, and everybody's in this area. We have lots of Lighthorse in this area to, reach out to the cities as well. And I mean, because we're all partners together in all of this, and so.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, can I start? I'll start. I've got a number of questions. I'm Craig Murray. I'm a retired Tulsa police officer.
Okay.
I know Tulsa's been cross-deputized for years. I never had the pleasure. But in looking over things, just a few questions to try to address when you or Teresa or the chief. First off, on page 149, it talks about the term of the agreement, that it's a 2-year commencing on the effective date, and then it's an automatic 1-year renewal. I know recently our governor thought some things aren't automatic, and that there were some issues between the tribes and the governor. I guess want to make sure that we don't go down that route as one thing.
Well, I think one of the things about this agreement is if you look at section 4B, in addition, I'm only kind of answering your question, but we are also allowed, either party can withdraw from the agreement with 60 days notice. So I think, to me, that gives me some reassurance that if there's a problem, we can get out of it or renegotiate, we can always reassess.
Okay.
And there are some provisions, this operates with individual commissions given to each officer from the different agencies. And there are also methods in here to end, withdraw, terminate any commission if there are issues with a particular officer.
And Teresa, that's a good point too, because it's been a while since we initially had this, and they've been gracious enough to allow us to amend some things and make some changes, Counselor, that has been great, because there were some things at the beginning that we might take some issue with and so forth. So one of those was, our concern was at the time, what if there was an officer that for whatever reason we had some issues, something there that we're moving them out the door, something to that effect. There might be something strange, but we would allow, it would be able to be tweaked on certain ones that it didn't have to be a broad brush to everything either. So.
Okay. Thank you. Section 7 on page 152 talks about the applicant agency provides National Crime Information Center data on each applicant. Again, not being in that part of the realm in my law enforcement career, is the NCIC checks, are those charged to an agency, or is it provided because FBI runs it? How is that done? Is there a fee?
I apologize. I caught most of yours, Counselor. Is that about? Did you ask if there's a fee to that?
Yeah, because it says that we have to run each applicant in a background through NCIC, and I didn't know if there is a fee associated with every NCIC check, or does FBI cover the cost of that, and we run, each agency just runs them at will, or?
Craig, what page are you on?
I'm on 152, section 7, F and H. Well, F first.
Thank you.
H is the next one.
I'm going to ask that question, and I think you're indicating that they do. I don't know the answer to that.
You know what? I'm not sure. We run them regularly, and it's not usually cost prohibitive. If we need to do one, then we do.
Counselor, I don't know the answer to that, but we can certainly find out.
Okay. Well, then we'll go to H on that page.
Hey, Craig, before you continue, are you reading that Are you reading that to say that each officer, which is ours here in Jenks, for whom may pursue a potential commission to be cross-deputized, are you reading that we're going to need to do an NCIC check on them prior to them becoming accomplished and cross-deputized? Is that right, Chief? Haven't they already had NCIC checks done?
Yes, we've already done and so forth. So I apologize. It's been a while since I've seen that. So go ahead, Ms. Teresa.
I can tell you this is secondhand, because this is a conversation I had with Major Brown, but my understanding was that when we have already performed them, that they are most likely relying on the searches that we did previously for each officer, because we had a conversation about whether there's going to be a delay to run all the checks, and my understanding is that we could very quickly be cross-commissioned.
And that's my understanding from Chief Hawkins over the years we talked about it, is that there's some language in there and so forth, but that it does move very quickly. It's just a kind of just like we did with the SWAT team, essentially, is an approval or not between the agencies.
Okay. The number on H, it says the commissions shall be issued to qualified officers who are full-time. And I know we have some reserve officers that fill quite a few shifts, that they may be covering that area that night and get a call there. So we're going to be up, are we going to be up a creek, or are we going to be able to cover those officers in this situation?
Once again, I don't know the answer on the full-time, because at the time when we had looked at that, we probably didn't utilize them as heavily as we do now. But we always, we're always out there. I'll check in before I commit any further on it, Counselor. I just don't know the answer to that either.
Okay. All right, moving to page 154, section 9A. It talks about arrest procedure, medical treatment. Says, that if an arrest is made, that they will be transported to a facility. I'm not sure now, what are we talking, like our city jail? We talking Tulsa County Jail? Are we talking going to Mulgee, to the tribal police headquarters? What are we looking at on something like that?
So the jails, they are working on agreements with right now. They just signed with David L. Moss, and then we have Okmulgee, but they're in the process of getting multiple more agreements in place, so that transport transition kind of thing isn't so burdensome on anyone.
Okay, and then along with the same question, when the medical requirement, it says they need to be transferred to the nearest Indian Health Service. Is that going to be Muskogee? Is that going to be Okmulgee? I know there are some in Tulsa, but they may be like an 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Right, it's most likely going to be Okmulgee.
Okay. If we would, page 155, section 10A, each party is responsible for providing full-time officers through the orientation. Is it something that the light horseman would come in and do a train the trainer with one officer, chief, or is it, would we send an officer to them, they train, he comes back and trains?
Counselor, the specific details on that we haven't worked out, but we more than likely, you've attended ours before and so forth. We're going to do whatever is most cost effective, and the chief and I, like I said, have that good of a relationship that I'm sure it would be. If I want his person to come up and train just like they did tonight and so forth, I expected one, I got two. It's just kind of like that, so I don't expect any other expenses and so forth associated with that. I think we can find a medium ground there, so I'm not all that concerned about that.
Okay, along that does the BIA provide CLEAT hours for the training, or would there be continual training that officers would need to keep up with stuff that's changing with the BIA over this?
So all our officers are all CLEAT certified, and then our trainers that train there from the department are CLEAT certified instructors, so they'll get CLEAT hours within any light horse training. And then the separate training, so the as she alluded to, the U.S. Attorney's Office, they also have classes on what is it, CJIC, criminal jurisdiction. Yeah, they have training that they provide. That the U.S. attorneys in Tulsa, Shannon Kazoni, she does some of these trainings as well. If they want more in-depth Indian country training, and I don't believe that there's a cost involved with that one. So Light Horse will have training available, as well as U.S. Attorney's Office.
And I think, Counselor, there's a lot of things like with Teresa will indicate too. There's just a lot of things. There's a lot of email strings and so forth going around here that there are some unknowns with that. We had an impromptu one with the U.S. District Attorney assigned to Creek the other day, came on, and there were some contradictory stuff that went back and forth. I think some people with the McGirt case and then throw in cross-deputization. Does it plug all the holes and so forth? I don't think Teresa can speak to this, but she's even spoken to attorneys and so forth that, there's still a lot of questions about it. I just think this is the first major step to take care of that. But there's reference in some of the training lately that indicates that even with that, I mean, you're still not necessarily out of the woods, so to speak, on it, but there's still a lot of questions.
I wasn't sure if the BIA is going to require officers to have additional training beyond the orientation, but as long as they're getting CLEAT hours and they have to have the mandated so many a year, I know that then it's going to take those officers away from more training if that's the issue. I know you try to usually do it in October, November, in a 2-week period and get all of our guys trained, but if it's not cohesive to them doing it, it may be during other times of the year, and then it puts us shorthand or something. I'm just trying to clear the water there.
Sure.
All right, last one I got is, I guess on page 156 is section 12, reimbursement. And it just states in there that the parties will be financed by a primary agency of each of the commissioned officers, except as expressively provided herein, which I couldn't find anything in what I read that would say where Jenks PD would be reimbursed for something. And I don't know if there would be a case where something would be out of the norm, but I guess just like bringing up an officer makes arrest, he's going to take a medical treatment down to Muskogee, or to Okmulgee to the jail. I didn't, because at one time, Light Horse had to come up from Okmulgee. There weren't a lot here. So you guys' department obviously is getting bigger, and that's great. And they're probably always going to be available, but I guess I'm just trying to answer some questions that come to my mind in reading this to make sure. I'm all for it, but I just want to make sure we're kind of getting these answers out or questions out so we kind of cannot get hit later on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Councilor, it does. And we're, even with, take the part of the cross-deputization out of the context here, and even our own policies and procedures, with someone that's requiring medical attention and so forth, we're doing everything we can, even in normal circumstances, to cite them and release and so forth. We don't sit on too many at the hospital anymore at all, regardless. So it would have to be pretty significant for us to even do that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great questions, Counselor. Thank you. All right, any other questions from council?
Well, I will move to approve.
Second. Oh, do you have a question, Gary?
Yes, I do have one question. It's based on my ignorance. How can you identify me from somebody that is a member of the nation?
So that in lies a lot of working with the other agencies to get the cross. You don't know. I mean, Green Country is such a mix of, all the different tribes that are in our area, and that not everybody's identifiable anymore. And so that's why we're working on these crosses, to make sure the officers are covered. Because, you're going to get a Cherokee citizen that's, that wasn't raised, but they still, they are a citizen and are privy to, the benefits and resources of being a citizen. But sometimes you don't know this until you're in the booking process, or, you're already into the process, and then you find out. And so that's what this would be, more of a coverage for those officers to make sure that.
Exactly. This would take it out of the whole scope of why we do it. And they would have to, in the requirements of the law counselor, they can't just say, I'm a member. They have to produce the actual card and the identification with it. But this would cover all of those holes anyway.
Yeah, I was after liability.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So my question, and this is just a general overall question, is like, if this doesn't pass, then what happens?
Teresa?
Well, my concern would be more on the liability as well as public safety. I mean, like I talked about, our officers pull over or pursue a suspect who committed, let's say a major crime, something, an armed robbery, a violent crime. Our officers, if they are not crossed, and this person happens to be a federally recognized tribal member, our officers do not have authority to arrest this individual. Our officers can simply detain, and in this case, I just said it was a major crime, so it's going to be federal, but they're probably going to call the FBI and Light Horse. And they're going to have to sit there and detain this individual and hopefully not have to use force, hopefully not get injured while they wait for the FBI or Light Horse to show up, because they don't have authority to make the arrest. They don't have authority to do anything further. I mean, the big problem comes if they have to use force. They injure the suspect, and then suddenly our officer is not entitled to qualified immunity that they usually would have to protect them in these situations, or potentially not. I mean, of course, there are some arguments we would make, but it's a real risk. Also, the idea that someone commits something and they're trying to detain or catch them and wait on Light Horse at the FBI, and that there's a problem actually enforcing and prosecuting someone because our officers didn't have the authority to make that arrest and to start that investigation. That's from a legal perspective.
The class action suits that are going on right now, there are already class action suits about what's happened in the last year or two regarding everything from small tickets and fines that have run through our court system already, and that would obviously continue on.
Yeah. And I think on a smaller scale, when we're dealing with things like traffic offenses, my understanding is once our officers are cross-deputized, they can write their City of Jinx tickets, or if the person is a tribal member, they can write a Creek Nation ticket in one form or the other. Without that, our officers are probably going to let a lot of speeders and stop sign runners go, because Light Horse is, I imagine, really busy right now and probably may not be able to run over to Jenks for somebody, going 10 miles an hour over down Main Street.
Okay, thank you.
What I would like to bring forth on this is, and she can help me on this, is a lot of coverage, like you were bringing up, on the different facilities that you would take somebody that had violated something like either to Okmulgee or to Muskogee, Tahlequah, wherever the local office is. If I understand, the division is like anything else. Even if it's a Creek or a Cherokee, where you take them, how you do and will process them depends on their address. Because if a Creek lives in Cherokee, then you would take them to Cherokee. I know this is thrown, and that's why I'm asking for clarification on this, because it's not all as cut and dried as, because they're Creek, they go to Okmulgee. There's something in the back of my mind that has to do with their address, where they physically live.
I'll try to help address that. So within the Creek Nation boundaries, which it covers 11 counties, not entire counties, but we stretch into 11 different counties to include all of, Jenks, Glenpool. It doesn't matter what tribe they are. When they are within the Creek Nation, they are subject to the laws of Creek Nation. If they are federally recognized Indian, then they will be subject to the laws of Muskogee Creek Nation when they are within our boundaries.
Is that okay, when they're it doesn't have anything to do with their address, it has to do with where the offense took place?
Correct. If it happened here, then Creek Nation would take care of it. If it happened in Tahlequah, they're not being recognized as a reservation, so that would not be us. But if it happened within Jenks, Glenpool, this area, within our 11 counties that we have that were the reestablished boundaries, then it would be subject to the laws of Muskogee Creek Nation.
Okay, thank you for that. I just didn't want them, if they had a Cherokee here in Creek County, so they would know what facility to take them to. What?
That case came up maybe 100 years ago, where they had issues like that, and so as long as you're a federally recognized Indian, it's all subject to the same laws of that jurisdiction.
Okay.
But I think, Kay, for the most part, Light Horse is going to show up and they'll know where to take them. I just try to clarify that if a Light Horseman wasn't available, what our officers would need to do or have to do.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
I have one last question. With the cross deputization, does it allow Jenks officers to assist in, say, the city of Tulsa, the city of Glenpool, things like that? Or would overriding agreements with those cities take precedence?
Yeah. Well, nothing would, if it's obviously a non-tribal member, nothing would change for us. It would be the same if we're assisting Glenpool and so forth. But if it were assisting in regard to the detective needing assistance or something like that, we would have that jurisdiction just like they would. So if that's what keeps it easy, if they wanted us across over there, the river, we could do it. That's the whole point to the cross deputization. Yes. It would be the
I didn't know if the city of Tulsa would have overriding agreements or what.
Yeah.
But I guess we're learning with.
Yeah. We would be cross deputized, and we would have the same jurisdiction as what they would, just like they would here. We're only giving up a small little portion of that. They're giving up a much larger jurisdictional issue to us. But that would rarely happen, you know, is about as much as it happens now, so.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Chief, if I may, just to throw another question out, is the Jenks schools police, are they going to need to be involved with cross deputization?
Well, that has, I mean, that just even, that's come up over the years back and forth, certainly,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, move to approve.
And I will second again.
All right, if there's no more discussion, we can vote.
Ogier,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes, the motion carries, and I just wanted to thank you to everyone who worked on making this happen. This year has definitely kept us on our toes, and you all haven't missed a beat, so we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate it.
All right, we will move on to item 11, request to award a bid for construction of the Veterans Park Trail Extension Project to Construction Enterprises of Tulsa, Oklahoma. The total amount of $206,811. $140,000 is included in year FY 2021 budget, account number 535615392. Funding for the remaining $66,811 is requested to be appropriated from the JPWA 1 cent capital fund balance to be budgeted to account number 535615392, Parks and Grounds Capital Overlay. Mr. Robinson, welcome.
Mayor, members of council, back in 2014 when Veterans Park Trail was originally constructed, the original intention was to have a 3/4 mile long trail, but when the project was actually bid out and awarded, it came in over budget, so they had to trim it down to a 1/2 mile trail. So in 2019, we had GS Helms and Associates design the remaining section, so it'd be a full 1 mile long trail. They're the ones that did the original trail design, so it's just, we used the same firm. They already had everything kind of laid out for back then as well. And in January of this year, we applied for a grant from the Oklahoma Tourism Board for $140,000 to cover this trail. Because of COVID, the response, whether we got the grant or not, was delayed and delayed. And we found out in July that we did not get the grant. So when we bid this project in April and the bids were opened in May, the original intention was to have the results of that grant by then. And since we didn't get it before the new budget year, we estimated how much we needed for the budget, and the budget, or the awards came back with the lowest one being Construction Enterprises at $216,000. And during this period from about May to now, I've met with the Army Corps of Engineers, and especially the individual that's in charge of the 408 permits for levee work. And he's requiring a large amount of work if we cross the levee, which was the original intention, is put a connection from this trail onto the trail that parallels Aquarium Drive, so that you could cross between there instead of having to come all the way around towards the CVS and back down towards Comanche. And so we talked to Construction Enterprises. They minused off their bid the amount that would be for the section trail over the levee. So the actual award is for $206,811, and staff requests approval of this award.
All right, thank you. Any questions on this?
So Chris, this trail actually is going to, where it bumps up to the levee, it ends and then it continues again on the other side of the levee? I'm trying to imagine, picture this in my head.
Page 215, if you could.
Yeah, I looked at the drawing, but I didn't have my magnifying glass with me.
Yeah, it's not very clear on the drawing on page 215. But the trail where it ends on the backside of the levee in the little loop, it will continue down towards the skate park. And there'll be sections where it crosses at both the small bridges there across the Wilmot Creek drainage channel. And then it will loop around towards the parking lot along Comanche, and then in front of the playground, then back and down and around towards Veterans Pond, and then wrap around the shoreline all the way to the start of the trail on the east side of the pond.
So just to be clear, there's a break in the trail where you're.
No, there's no break
in the trail.
No break. We are just planning to connect it to, you can see the little box in the corner.
Okay.
At the southeast corner of Veterans Pond where the trail already exists, we're planning to connect it to the trail along the Aquarium Place, but we won't be doing that this time around.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
The grant rejection, what did we hear back from?
It just wasn't selected. We didn't really get
Nothing
reason.
other than it's just a no. They
Yeah.
don't give you any determination. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Any motions?
I move to approve item number 11.
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Bach,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. All right, that brings us to, we covered the city manager's report. Mr. Shroud, is there anything that you left out that you'd like to tell us now?
Oh, I gotta save something for the Public Works Authority meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else right now, are there any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right, let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn, Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Let's do another one. Let's see, this is the Jenks Public Works Authority. Let's call this meeting to order Tuesday, August 4th, 2020, 7:47 p.m. Let's call roll, please.
OJ,
Here.
Lynn,
Here.
Murray,
Here.
Isbell,
Here.
Box,
Here.
Dyke,
Here?
Chair Lee.
Here. First order of business, consideration and appropriate action relating to requests for approval of the consent agenda. Any questions or motions on the consent agenda?
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Chair Lee.
Yes. We will pull item 2 and move on to item 3. Request to approve resolution number 2020-14, a resolution amending the annual appropriations by $40,000 in account number 535215399, JPWA 1 cent capital, street maintenance, other equipment, and $66,811 in account number 532525392, JPWA 1 cent capital, parks and grounds, building and improvements, for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, to purchase a hot box used in street repairs and to fund the additional cost for Veterans Park Trail Extension Project. Mr. Sauceda.
Chair, members of the authority, the resolution before you is to officially appropriate the funds, the extra funds needed to fund the Veterans Park Trail Extension Project. And the other piece of it, the $40,000, as I explained in my memo, before the fiscal year ended back the June 30th, 2020 fiscal year, we had identified some unspent budget funds that our Public Works Director, Tim Doyle, had requested to kind of earmark or set aside to purchase a hot box that I believe is used in keeping asphalt hot while they work on potholes and street repairs. And unfortunately, maybe due to some miscommunication, that encumbrance was not submitted before the end of the fiscal year, so those funds kind of expired. And this is just asking council to appropriate that unspent money so we can proceed with the purchase of the hot box. And if you have any questions on what an actual hot box is, I think Tim Doyle is on the line as well.
All right,
Robert, do we know if there's any other equipment that we have possibly overlooked that we may need to bring up in the future from JPWA as far as an oversight, possibly?
So we are exploring an option in leasing some of our vehicles. We are talking with Enterprise Fleet Management instead of spending, say, $40,000 for a new truck, we can use that $40,000 and lease, 4 or 5 vehicles for our employees to use. So that is something that we're currently exploring. And then some of the other kind of big ticket item equipment, kind of like a street sweeper or a dump truck, we're looking at maybe financing that as that need arises.
I have a question. I'm disappointed in the fact that we forgot to account for $40,000. I mean, I thought that's kind of stuff that we had in the past and we're kind of trying to get beyond. But so, yeah, say that again.
If I could just jump in, we're not saying that we didn't account for $40,000.
But we didn't use it from the right fund.
No. I mean, when council passes a budget, we have July 1st through June 30th to use that money. And when it comes to the end of the year, usually finance staff works with departments to say, okay, let's just round numbers, like $1 million. If Public Works had $1 million to use, and in their line item, there's salaries, there's benefits, there's business line item, contract line item, and in those line items, let's say contractual services, if it's $40,000, there may be behind that one number, and anticipating spending something like $10,000 on this project or this contract, another $10,000 on this. And as we go throughout the year, when we create the budget, it's just kind of a plan. And so we have departments that might be planning to use money or planning to purchase certain things, and they may not. They may end up coming back and saying, well, we actually didn't need this item, or this item may not have been a priority. And so what we have is come June, really before June, even in May, the finance department's looking at the budget that was approved by council, and all those expenditures, are kind of pre-approved in the budget process. And then there's essentially money that hasn't been spent or money that's left over. And so, in this case, if, there's money left over to purchase something like a hot box, or we had planned to buy it, and then somehow, through the end of the fiscal year, it just slips through and we didn't spend the money. There's cases where if we didn't spend the money, we don't ask council to reappropriate it. We just say, well, we didn't spend it on, say, the hot box as this example, and we don't really think it's, we thought it was a priority a year ago when we were planning the budget, but now that, we've gone through the year, we decided maybe we didn't need it, and that $40,000 just stays in the bank account and we don't spend the money. And in this case, if I understand correctly, it was Tim working Robert saying, okay, we have money available to buy this hot box, And, you know, the way that we set aside funds is by filling out an encumbrance and setting that money aside, especially if we know a specific vendor.
Right, but we didn't in the timely manner. So I'm just saying, I'm disappointed that that didn't happen in a timely manner. Because he says in here, unfortunately, due to some miscommunication, encumbrance was not submitted for the end of the fiscal year. So it's kind of like you have a due date, you should have it done by the due date. That's all I'm pointing out. Okay, and so my other question that I was going to say was, is this money that, you know how we move money from funds to funds when we do have that money left over? Is this the money we're allocating? Is that from those funds where that extra money was left over?
Yes, this is coming out of our Fund 53, our 1 cent capital.
Great, so we already put this money in there, so we're just asking you to take it out again.
Not necessarily take it out, but just spend it out of that fund.
Where would you have spent it out of?
Fund
Your other budget? What?
The same account, Fund 53.
Okay, then that's what I'm asking. So I'm just saying, slap on your hand, make your due dates. I understand where the money's coming from, because it's not like we're taking money from someplace else. That's my only point on there, okay?
And we do communicate to our departments at least 15 days before June 30th ends to submit encumbrances, because our software system literally once it's July 1st, we cannot book an expense for the previous year. So
right.
the software system helps us.
Doesn't everybody know your year ends June 30th?
You would think.
I'm just saying, we praise you guys and we don't usually nitpick, okay? But it was really obvious the way it was written that we missed it on that one. So that's all I'm saying. Okay, but thank you for clarifying that those are the same funds that it would have come from previously. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would agree with Dawn. I think our biggest concern here is that if it's not in by June 30th, then it needs to wait till the next year, to be honest. Personal opinion.
We're just trying to be transparent as to the true reason and not try to kind of slip something by.
Well, and we appreciate that. We do. And I'm sure you'll still get your hot box.
Any other questions from council? All right, any motions?
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
OJ,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Chair Lee.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to item 4, request to enter executive session pursuant to 25 OS 307 C11 for purposes of conferring on matters pertaining to economic development where public disclosure would violate the confidentiality of the business. Simon Properties. Are there any motions?
Yes, sir. I'll make a motion to enter executive session.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Let's vote.
OJ, OJ,
Sorry, yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Chair Lee.
Yes. All right, we will head over to executive session. Feel free to take 5 if you need to stop.
Let's take 5 for a second and we'll be right there.
That's a great idea.
Sounds good.
Bad news, they fired all of you.
I was yelling no.
Hey, did you see what Christopher brought?
This is my daily lunch.
Okay.
Did I make it back?
You made it.
Yeah, you should see a different room.
I know. You know what happened to your angel wings back there, Dawn?
I moved them because they look like bunny rabbit ears or devil horns. So I said to the blink with it, and I moved them. And I bought this picture for the front room and it didn't match it very well. I'm like, it looks okay in here. So yeah, the wings are still on the floor next to me. Maybe I'll put them in front of me. I don't know.
Okay, we back in session?
We are. We're waiting for everybody to jump in.
Oh yeah, there's Corey back in council chambers.
All right, so we just, we're missing Gary and Craig.
Yeah, we're missing Gary. Yeah.
I'm here.
I'm here.
Oh, and there's
I'm
Craig.
here.
Okay. Sorry, guys. All right, we are back from executive session. No votes were taken. It's 8:47 p.m. We are on to other business, general manager's report. Mr. Strout.
Chair and all members of the authority, we, as you recall, a revenue bond was approved by this authority for new water meters that are radio read meters. And we expect that that money will become available hopefully the first week in September, I believe. We had as a part of that, we had a ratings call with, I think it was S&P, about going over our finances, and we were given a AA rating, which I think even our financial advisors were a little bit surprised because they thought that it would be a little bit lower than that based on COVID. And we had a ratings call. Went through this whole process when we had the wastewater treatment plant revenue bonds that were approved by this authority maybe 9 months ago, and we were given the AA rating. And so, we were really pleased with that. And, just another indicator that I think both the Jenks Public Works Authority and the City of Jenks are doing very well economically and very strong financially. Something that we've been working on that is really probably months away from coming before the Planning Commission or coming before the City Council is there's a property that I believe the Jenks Public Works Authority owns. It's the city or the Public Works Authority, but I think it's the Public Works Authority. It's about something like 5 or 6 acres, and it's in the Jenks Industrial Park, which is on 111th, just west of 75, just west of South James Street. And we had a developer come who was interested in the property, but wanting to do some sort of residential development, and they offered $850,000 for that, let's call it 6 acres. And, we thought that the development was potentially interesting, and this authority, I believe this authority approved entering into the contract in early June. And since then, the developer has kind of fleshed out their vision for this property a little bit more, and has been working with our planning staff and our public works staff, looking at the infrastructure and looking at all of the planning documents, because it is an industrial park and we're talking about a potential residential development. And so we got to a point last week where staff was meeting and was saying, this is just really kind of a gray area. On the new comp plan, that parcel is identified as a business park, which would be something like what you see at Gateway currently, with office buildings and so we have the new comp plan. This is an old SU specific use permit, I believe. And so it's in an industrial park. And so you can see where this is kind of a gray area where a developer wants to come in and put residential in what is an existing, and this is the only industrial park Jenks has. This is the only undeveloped land within that industrial park. So this is it for any type of use like that in the city of Jenks, while we have, literally hundreds of acres of land that has been identified for residential development throughout the city. And then on top of that, this is going to be, the proposal is kind of more duplexes, and, all of these will be rentals. And so you can see where staff has been exploring this option, but it's obviously, again, kind of a gray area. And, we expressed some concern to the potential developer. And, so we've heard from some other people that they've contacted trying to kind of get a hold of us, I think, because trying to make this thing happen. But again, we have no application. We haven't sold the land, but we are under contract with them. But again, this isn't something that you will most likely see for months to come, and we don't have an application in hand yet. But if you do hear about it, that's kind of what's going on here. Is staff is trying to figure out, is this a tenable option for that property? It's even more complicated because we actually own the property. So that's kind of an overview, and I can get into a lot more, or not a lot more, but I can get into a little bit more detail if you would like at some other day. But we have a meeting with them that was scheduled for tomorrow, and they want to meet in person, and they suggested postponing it till next week because of the COVID positive case that we've had here at City Hall. So I had a conversation with them just today. And I think that, we're working with them, but there are some challenges that we're working through. So the Torrey Lake subdivision that was approved back in, a few months ago now on South Harvard, south of 131st, just south of Providence Hills, they've been working on their infrastructure plans, and our engineers have been reviewing their infrastructure plans, and there are some hiccups that they have in developing that property because there's elevation changes to the point that I think some of the plans they've provided show like a 10-foot drop in elevation from one house or one lot to one lot, which is pretty significant. And Chris Robinson has been working with them to see if they can do some more grading so there isn't this steep elevation changes from lot to lot. And I think that all of you have received an email from Mr. Dellis, who owns a lot just north of 131st, east of Kimberly Clark Place or Yale Place, whatever you want to call it. And he's talking about a water line. It's kind of a weird situation where all the houses on that block, and I think all the houses east of Yale Place, are actually on Bixby water. And so they're not tied into the City of Jenks water system or Jenks Public Works Authority water system. Mr. Dellis purchased a lot back there and knowing that there wasn't a Jenks water service, but I don't know if he did know that Bixby denied him service, because Bixby basically said, we're not having any new water customers in the City of Jenks, which kind of makes sense. It's an odd situation. But when Fraser Lakes was developed, which is the development that's still underway, there's houses there and everything, and the infrastructure's in place. But when that was developed, staff, knowing that Butch Dellis had this situation where he didn't have water and Bixby wouldn't give him access, we worked with the developer of Fraser Lakes to put in a kind of a stub out going east so that Butch could theoretically tie in to Fraser Lakes water system. The only hiccup, or major hiccup, has been there's a flag lot that goes back that I believe is owned by the Johnsons, and the Johnsons don't want to give Butch an easement to put that water line through. There's a big PSO easement. PSO said, sure, Mr. Dellis, you can have this easement to put a water line in, no problem. But the Johnsons would not agree to that. And so, we went through a lot of work to get the developer of Fraser Lakes to put in this stub out so that Mr. Dellis could connect, and then the Johnsons would not allow Mr. Dellis to connect. So that's, another problem. And then, Mr. Dellis wanted to see what it would cost for the City of Jenks to extend our water service all the way into his house and provide water service to his neighbors. And it came back, we did the engineering on all this and came up with engineering plans, came up with cost estimates, and it was going to be a few $100,000, and obviously, Mr. Dellis, that was just not going to be economically feasible to pay for that. And so then he went to, like, I guess his plan, like number 6 or 7, which was he worked with the Indian Health Services, and they provide water to Native American people that have land that don't have access to water. And so the Indian Health Services has been designing and engineering their own water line that would tie into our existing water line. And we just received that in mid-July, their engineering plans. Our engineers have reviewed it and sent comments back to the Indian Health Services about their plans. They in turn have sent us a contract, and now we're looking through their contract because there's some, all this is very complicated, and it's been extremely time consuming for both Mr. Dellis and for city staff. But we continue to work on this and how we can accomplish getting water to Mr. Dellis with that lot. And just to, a high level reminder that when developers develop a piece of property, or when they build homes, or when they build a business, they're responsible for tying into our water system, and oftentimes even building our own water system that they then dedicate to us. So whether it's Yorktown or any other subdivision, the developer puts in all the water lines and then dedicates all those water lines that are in the right of way to the Jenks Public Works Authority and the city of Jenks. And then, anything from the meter to a house is then the homeowner's water line that they're responsible for. And so in this instance, since it is just one person building one house, it is a lot more expensive. I'm trying to think of what the word I'm trying to think of.
Is there a house there now?
No.
So he's just trying to get, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Geez, so he shouldn't have bought the property.
Well, and I don't think anyone could have anticipated this many roadblocks. I mean, it's almost like a comedy of, it's not funny, but it's just like, I couldn't even imagine that there would be this many roadblocks to getting water to this one piece of property. And so we're getting there, and I know that Mr. Dellis is frustrated, and he's been waiting on the Indian Health Services to get the city of Jenks, the plans. And we got those July 14th. We reviewed them, sent the plans back. I think that we're pretty much good on the plans, but now Indian Health Services has sent us a contract, and there's just stuff in there that we have to work through. The city of Bixby said that they have a similar situation with someone in Indian Health Services. They've been working with Indian Health Services to get water, and they're still negotiating with Indian Health Services. And so we're doing our best, but I know you've received emails on that, and it's been a very long process, and I feel for Mr. Dellis, but a lot has gone into, every time we think there's a solution, there's some sort of setback. So that's kind of what's going on there.
Do you have an estimated time as to when the contract could be reviewed and sent back to the Indian Health Services? Because I know it's been a 2-year period for Mr. Dellis.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I'll just say, there's some things in the contract that I just glanced at it, and there's some things that I don't know that initially, just at first blush, we can even agree to. So there's some work that we need to do reviewing this. So we'll do our best to review and get back with Indian Health Services this month. But in terms of, we have to Vice Mayor, answer your question, do I have a timeline on, we'll work to get back with Indian Health Services, but there's some significant issues with what we were presented, and we just need to work through that. So in the meantime, though, we demolished a house that the Public Works Authority bought, whatever that acreage is, just right next to Mr. Dellis. We demolished a house. We no longer need a meter that was a Bixby meter. We can surplus that meter and get it to Mr. Dellis, and Bixby has indicated to us they would provide him water service if we give him or sell him that meter. And so in the short term, that might be a solution, at least to get him access to water so he can at least start construction on a house. So hopefully, I mean, because honestly, the long term, the new water line, I mean, that's going to take a while, because you're talking about, you know, building a whole new water line, tying into our system. The meters is actually the quicker fix. And so, you know, we can get that hopefully to him within the month. And, you know, then it's a matter of him just tying in, you know, from then we give him the meter, it's on him to, you know, tie into the Bixby system. It's, you know, we don't have anything to do with that. So,
but we've been in contact with Bixby and they've approved of the fact that we could do that, correct? Because the last time I spoke with you, it was you hadn't been able to get a hold of anybody in Bixby.
No, and we heard from them late last week, and they said that yes, theoretically we can move forward with this, and so we just need to let Butch know that we have a meter he can use, and that Bixby has said yes. And I don't know where he is in his construction or his construction plans, but hopefully he'll have this meter in the next couple weeks.
Okay, so we've communicated that to Mr. Dellis.
I couldn't say if Chris has communicated that to Mr. Dellis, and we had talked about renting him the meter since he's saying he wants it as a temporary. Bixby said,
right, it's a quick fix at this point in time.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so can we communicate to him that we've communicated with Bixby and that we have a temporary resolution to his problem, and then maybe long-term we can, you know, move on from there, but at least it gives him an access to the water? Have we communicated that at all?
Well, again, we were planning on renting that meter, and at this point, it doesn't matter to me. We can just sell it to him this week.
Okay. Sorry.
All right. Thanks for working on that. All right. Is there anything else?
Loud, Counselor Box.
You are.
All right. Any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Sorry.
Let's vote.
Oja,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Isbell,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Chair Lee.
Yes. We're adjourned. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Have a good one.